This is an Accelerativ Thrust special news report.
Well, all right. I hope that you all are enjoying listening to everyone's responses. I know that we are. And so here's episode 2. Hello.
Hello.
Oh, hi. Sorry, I had to run upstairs. There was apparently some sort of rabid raccoon outside. I don't know.
Oh, shit.
Rabid raccoon went into his room.
Citizens of Earth, welcome to Accelerativ Thrust. I'm Dan.
And I'm Erik. So,
holy smokes, 150 episodes.
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
We reached out to people, friends of the shows, people that we've reviewed, people we've interviewed, people we know are listeners, and asked them to send us a voicemail or a message, basically talking about their favorite albums. And so, let's listen to those. We're all excited to hear what you have to say. Here's Nick Beard from Safety Second, Old Scratch Revival Singers, Land of Blood and Sunshine, and Nick Beard.
Hi, Erik. Hi, Dan. Love the show. I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller. I have a few records I call favorites at the moment. The first is a Swedish singer-songwriter called Scott. As far as I found, she does all of her own music, instruments and vocals, and she does all the recordings and mixes. Interestingly, I'd probably label it pop, but it's not like American pop. There's kind of a pagan mystery interwoven throughout her tracks that magically transport me into her mystical realm. And I can picture fairies and extraterrestrials. She does a little fantasy and sci-fi. The song I discovered her first is called Overcome. And it's a pretty simple song. She layers her voice into super thick but soft, kind of like a blanket of oohs and ahs. And then there's several like secondary vocals that sound like they're really far away, just beyond the tree line of a dense, dark timber. There are some whispers and breathy vocals, and the lyric is, "Don't let go." And I don't think I could if I tried. The album from which this song comes is called A Letter from the Universe, as if I subconsciously summoned these messages and manifested this dark folk village myself. I really, really do enjoy that album by Scott.
Here's Mark Hans Showalter from Lazy Hex.
Okay, I would say my favorite music is whatever I haven't heard yet. Some new thing on the horizon. But as far as timeless things that have done me for 30 years, 25 years, I would say David Bowie, Ziggy Stardust. We're Only in It for the Money, Frank Zappa, Brian Eno, Another Green World, and the Residents commercial album, and I can listen to those all the time over and over and over. Sure, there's other ones, but those are the main ones.
Here's Ben Driscoll from Conniption Fit, All Rattle and Dust. Ben Driscoll from all kinds of things.
I've got my unsolicited list of albums here for you. Top 5 all time was too difficult, so I narrowed it down a little bit. Top 5 albums that I witnessed the release of. Albums that I heard or bought, around the time they came out. First one, Bob Dylan, Time Out of Mind. And this is probably my favorite album, period. Came out in 97. I was already a Dylan fan. I'd consumed most of his other albums, 60s, 70s, some of the 80s albums. So having a new one come out was exciting. I remember the anticipation of it. It has a sound and a feeling, character to it that is its own thing, for sure. It's dark and bright and hopeful and bleak. Anyway, still love that album. Bob Dylan, Time Out of Mind. Number 2, Rancid, self-titled, or 2000, it's known as. Number 3, Nico Case, Blacklisted. I don't think I'd heard of her before I heard this album. I remember getting it at the time it came out. It was on a new release rack at either Co-op or Mohair Pear. The cover was cool. I feel like she was laying under a van or something, but really great record, start to finish. Awesome songs. Her voice is lovely. The arrangements are really cool and sparse and sometimes complicated. I love that album too. Nico Case, Blacklisted. Number 4 is Tom Waits, Blood Money. That came out around the same time. Again, already a Waits fan, so having a new one come out was exciting. And with him, you didn't really know what you were going to get. I think he had Alice come out at the same time, or at least that same year. But of the two, Blood Money is it for me. Packed full of good songs and just all kinds of different sounds and styles. And for the last one, I thought I'd pick something kind of recent, and it's Dougie Poole, The Rainbow Wheel of Death. This is an album that Adam turned me on to, and I love it. Start to finish, great songs. It's sad and funny. Love the guy's voice. Yeah, wonderful album. Dougie Poole, The Rainbow Wheel of Death.
Hi, this is Phil Mull calling in to Accelerativ Thrust Podcasting. Happy 150 years of podcasting. You are truly pioneers in your field of media. My favorite record of all time, Beastie Boys' Paul's Boutique. This record has over 300 different samples and was truly a watershed moment for the Beastie Boys and hip-hop in general, until sampling was unfairly locked down about 5 years later. There will never be another record like this, and I truly wish that you would go out and listen to this immediately and find yourself immersed in a deep well of sampling in hip-hop.
Hey, Eric and Dan. Congrats on 150 episodes of your podcast. That's definitely commitment and accomplishment. And I really appreciate you guys interviewing me in the early days of Digital Sting when we started putting out our first records. And thanks for asking me about some of my favorite records. Being a pretty intense record nerd, it's really hard to narrow a list like this down. But yeah, I just picked a few out of the collection here, and I picked more than I should have, so I'll try to keep this quick. These aren't necessarily like my top favorite records ever exactly, but I just wanted to think about records I really, really love that represent different areas of my collection, and maybe some records that other people submitting for this show might not think of or might not have in their collection, and maybe some people in your audience haven't heard of these records. First up, I'm going to start with Yabby U and the Prophets. This is a reggae record from 1975. Next up is Lee Perry, Lee Scratch Perry, The Upsetter. Going off that, I'm going to pick How the West Was Won by Toyin. This record's from 1981. Moving forward, we're going to fast forward to 1991, just a few years later, 10 years later. Same style, dance hall music, Jamaica. This one's by Cuddy Ranks. It's called The Stopper. It was on Fashion Records. Then we're going to go with 1985 Master Mega Hits, Slang Tang Extravaganza. And then building off that, I'm going to pick Now Thing, 15 Dance Hall Instrumentals. This was actually put out in 2001 by Mowax, and it's a collection of dancehall instrumentals from the late 90s, early 2000s. Then I'm going to go with another a record kind of from the same time period. It's from 2001. It's by Ward 21. It's called Mentally Disturbed. And then I'm going to pick Equinox Bird Sound Power from 2016. We're going to kick it back a few years, back to 1985, or this is actually 1987, to the UK, going still in the Jamaican music diaspora, reggae music diaspora. This is Josh Shaka, Commandments of Dubs, Chapter 6 on his own label. It's called Deliverance. And then we're going forward with another UK dub, UK Steppers record from 1996 by Iration Steppers from Leeds called Original Dub Dat. Okay, number 12, Smith and Mighty. This is a 12-inch single, Beeline Fee Blow, with Life Has a Way on the B side. I picked another Bristol record to follow that up. A little bit later, 2018. This is a self-titled record by Young Echo Collective. Okay, this is like a little bit newer record actually from 2023, Paul St. Hilaire, Tiki Man Volume 1. Number 15, M-Beat, featuring General Levy, the track Incredible. This is a 12-inch. It's kind of like one of those that has 4 different versions of the track. This is an all-time jungle anthem. Following that up, I picked another drum and bass jungle style record. This is Christophe de Babylon. If You're Into It, I'm Out of It LP. It's from Germany, 1997. Then I picked for number 18, Sir Spyro, Topper Top. This is another grime record. This is an all-timer. Number 19, getting down to my last couple selections here. This is a compilation from 2016. It's called Guam O, The Sound of Durban. This is the compilation that introduced me to Guam music, which started in Durban, South Africa. And then last but not least, number 20, this is from the Principe label. I always rep the Principe label. Principe is from Lisbon, Portugal. They've been putting out records for, I don't know, I think over 10 years now, but really highlight distinct musical styles, electronic music coming out of Lisbon with connections to different African diasporas. I picked DJ Lycox's Luxa Era. This is a 12-inch from 2021. So check it out. That's my 20 records. Thanks again for asking me. Hope I wasn't too long-winded.
Hey, Dan. Hey, Erik. Congratulations on 150 episodes. It's Jacob Dank. A record that really meant a lot to me was Something to Write Home About by the Get Up Kids for so many reasons. I really love that early stuff, including 4 Minute Mile. Anyway, keep it short. Thanks, guys.
Hey guys, this is friend of the show, Jack Christensen. Congratulations on 150 episodes. That's incredibly cool. I can never really pick favorite albums or favorite bands, but I'm going to briefly touch on a couple things that have been the biggest influences on the music that I make. I won't go on at length about Violator by Depeche Mode or Vespertine by Bjork, because thousands of people already have and have done it way better than I could, but if you haven't heard both of those, check them out immediately. The first thing I'm going to mention is this band Sleaford Mods, specifically a 2020 compilation called All That Glue. They were sort of a huge aha moment for me, really, that the bass could be the main instrument and that you don't really even need any guitar. They're kind of post-punk, punk rap, punk hop, kind of these sort of trashy post-punk loops with rap vocals over top. They're great. Check them out. And then there's an associate of theirs named Billy No Mates. She released an album in 2020, which is the same year as that Sleaford Mods compilation, and just self-titled Billy No Mates. It's fantastic. It's actually sort of similar to Sleaford Mods, but more speak singing and less rap. And I guess it's more the music, the instrumentals it's less, not as much like trashy post-punk hip-hop. It's more, I don't know. I mean, I would say it's 80s influence, but it's definitely worth a listen. She has released a couple other albums too. They get progressively less speak singy. Like the first album has a lot of speak singing, and her next album, Cacti, has a lot more just singing, but they're both fantastic. Also, featured on my album was Nalani Proctor from Iowa. My favorite release of hers is called You Were Right, Hold My Hand. That album was of great comfort to me when my father was passing away a couple of years ago, and everybody should check that out also. Then I guess I have to sort of mention Black Marble. They might be maybe the biggest direct influence on the sound of my music. It's describe it as, sort of dark synth wave. I think their best record is called It's Immaterial. There was a couple before that I think are also really good. A lot more cold and dark sounding than that one. And I think after that they released, it's just one dude really, but the releases that came after that I don't like nearly as much. But if you're going to check out one Black Marble release, it should be It's Immaterial. All right, thanks so much, guys. Have a good one.
This is MJ from 10 Tigers AC in Muscatine, Iowa. As far as my favorite album of all time, that's hard to pin down because things change as you age. But I put together a list of what I think are some of my favorites throughout the years. Would be Pink Floyd, Animals, and then Radiohead, OK Computer, Tool, Enema, and then Built to Spills, Perfect From Now On. I also had a runner-up from last year, which was a band called Slift. Elion was the album, which I probably listened to as much as the rest in the first 4 months that it came out.
This is Rachel from Nani Perry, and I just wanted to talk about a few of my favorite albums. I'm not sure if they're my favorite albums of all time. I have a lot of those, so I tried to pick albums that have been influential to me and the music that I make over periods of time. The first album that I wanted to talk about was 69 Love Songs by the Magnetic Fields, and this album probably dates back the longest in terms of albums that I've been listening to the longest. I think I originally got into this album in middle school, around that time. This album's from 1999, but I was in middle school later than that. When I first got this album, it was on CD, and I only had volume 1. There's 3 volumes. So I really know the first volume of songs. It's probably around like the first 30 songs on the album. I know those songs the best. And since then, I've listened to the entire album. So now I'm familiar with the entire 69 Love Songs. And I just think that this album has stood the test of time for me, and I know it has for many other people. Another album I wanted to talk about that is similar to that idea is the album El Perro del Mar by the artist El Perro del Mar. And this album came out in 2006. I think I got into it right around that time, and it's another album that when I first got it, I was so obsessed with it, and maybe even more so than 69 Love Songs, and I would listen to it over and over, beginning to end, and then I just kind of forgot about it. And I had heard a song from the album recently when I was watching a television show, and I remembered this album and this artist, and I revisited the album as a whole, and it was just, it like brought back all of these memories and of me at the time when I was listening to the album. But the album in itself I really like because, again, all of the songs are very well written, pop songs, I'll call them. I think that all of the songs on this album are really well written, and the artist's voice is super haunting and different, but also very beautiful. Her lyrics are very simple and repetitive. it works and it's really good and it's very inspiring to me. So I wanted to add that to inspiring or favorite albums. And then I also, real quickly, wanted to talk about Television Personalities album and Don't the Kids Just Love It. I believe it's came out in 1981. In the same vein as the other two albums I mentioned, it's an album that when I had first heard it, which was probably around the same time that this band that I'm in, Nani Perry, started, and I was in college, and a roommate had put the album on, and I had never heard anything like it before, or maybe I had heard things like it, but it was just so different from things that I'd heard that were even similar to it. And it was just so inspiring to me, and I thought, again, from beginning to end, there is not a bad song on the album. You can tell that they really thought about the way that you would hear this album from beginning to end when you play it. This album has been very inspiring in the way that I write music, just like all of the albums I've mentioned have been inspiring to me. So obviously I am great at rambling and letting my stories trail on and on. So if I did like an all-time favorite album list, it would go too long. So I figured that this would be good, just a few inspirational albums from me for you to think about today. So thank you very much for listening.
Greetings, citizens of Earth and fellow Accelerativ Thrusters. You guys got to get an easier podcast name to say, Accelerativ Thrust. It's too hard for a guy like myself. So let's just say fellow A-Thrusties. This is Jeff Kaiser. I play drums in Death Kill Overdrive and In the Mouth of Radness. A couple of my favorite albums are The Bronx 1. Hell, The Bronx 1, 2, and 3 are all phenomenal. I love Bear vs. Shark, Terrorhawk, A Tribe Called Quest, The Low End Theory, and then just one that really inspired my drumming when I was younger would be Dookie by Green Day. Trey Cool's just an absolute beast on the skins. So that's a few of my favorites. I just want to say, boys, cheers to 150 episodes. I listen to everyone, and cheers to 150 more. And to all my A-Thrusties out there, stand up.
Yo, what up? This is Harold Flem. Shout out to Eric and Daniel and the Accelerativ Thrust podcast. Yeah, I don't know. I listen to a lot of pods, but I've been listening to a lot of older music lately. Shit like Rush, Duran Duran, Corn, Slipknot, System of a Down, Depeche Mode, Tears for Fears, all that kind of shit. Also, I have 2 young daughters, so I'm also often listening to stuff like Sabrina Carpenter and Chappell Roan and Bongo Cat. We have The Amazing Digital Circus episode 1 on vinyl. A lot of meme song shit like that. Let's see, some kind of newer records that I've listened to that I really enjoy are last year a record from a producer named Vegan, I believe is how it's pronounced, Vegyn. The Road to Hell is Paved with Good Intentions. That record is fire. Also, I just got the new Spirit Box album, which came out on my birthday the other day. And that record is heavy and beautiful and all of that. Also, I love the new Sage Francis mixtape that just came out in the last couple months called A Sick Twist Ending. Sage always makes shit that makes me want to make rap music again. Like just the fucking gold standard, really. And I've got the pre-order in for the new Chesky that's coming out. I can't remember. It might be his last project under the Chesky moniker. Bring Us the Head of Francisco Falls, Part 2. Definitely looking forward to that. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of all over the place with my listening right now. But shout out to Erik and Daniel for asking me to do this, and everybody be well. Peace.
Here's Nick Carney from Velcro Moxie and Bloody Dove.
Yeah, so I feel like I'm pretty lame when it comes to my favorite albums because, a lot of them are classics and they're probably everybody else's favorite in some regards. From the Beatles, Revolver, Rubber Soul, which I consider to almost be like a double album. The White Album, Let It Be, Abbey Road. Pink Floyd, Pipers at the Gates of Dawn with Syd Barrett. Madcap Laughs from Syd Barrett, or Barrett Album from Syd Barrett. Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, Animals, Led Zeppelin 1 through 4, Houses of the Holies, The Doors, LA Woman, Morrison Hotel, rap music, NWA, Snoop Dogg, Pick an Album, Dr. Dre, Cypress Hill, Black Sunday is one that I go back to a lot. You got Tribe Called Quest. There's so many good albums out there. And those are just like basic, I feel like. So I say I'm kind of lame. I stick to the classic stuff that I listen to, but one that maybe a lot of people don't know about that I go back to often, and I think it holds up well over the test of time, is Tripping Daisy, I Am an Elastic Firecracker. One of my favorite albums. I can put that on, and it always takes me back to the first days I listened to it. And I maybe pick out something new every time I listen to it as well. There's Nirvana. Bleach is one of my favorite albums for Nirvana. Everybody Loves Nevermind, In Utero. And I'm not even getting into like punk or, anything like that. So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there, but I always go back to Tripping Daisy.
Brandon Purley lists Brain Ticket, Cottonwood Hill, Einstürzende Neubauten, self-titled, Pink Floyd, Piper at the Gates of Dawn, The Flaming Lips, Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots, and Tom Waits' Blood Money. Here's Doug Nye.
I got to thinking about some of my favorite albums, some of my favorite music, and it's all over the place, but I always come back to the stuff that I found when I was living in Iowa City, and some of the bands that blew me away. The 12 Cannons were a two-piece when I found them, Jim DeRocher and Alex Body. Kevin Hansen gave me his copies of Volume 2 and 3 on CD when I worked with him at the Co-op. It's medieval dark folk. I saw them play the Mill a bunch. This was around 2009 when I was starting to mess around with music in Iowa City. And once I heard the 12 Cannons, it made me want to quit because they were my age, yet so advanced. I could only wish to get to a place like that. Another person that springs to mind is Samuel Locke Ward. As far as I'm aware, Sam is the most prolific songwriter in Iowa. He's incomparable. His wit is unmatched while also earnestly tackling serious issues. It's hard to pick top SLW records, but a few personal faves are Sacrilege, Treachery, Treason, and Time, and From the Privilege of the Grave. Special shout-outs to a couple newer songs, Band Books off Rando Guitar Box, and Try Cannibalism from Thrift Store Guitar Gold. Dig deep in his catalog. So many treasures.
My name's Danny, and two of my favorite albums are Calico by Ryan Beatty and Swimming by Mac Miller.
This is John Burns from Centaur Noir and Camp Regret, formerly of the band Methane Goats from the Quad Cities. I would say one of my most favorite and influential albums would be Radiohead's OK Computer. I remember one time, the summer after graduating from high school, me and some friends of mine dropped acid and hung out in our jam space in downtown Moline. And I remember the psychedelics kicking in as the light from the lamp danced on the top of the ornate ceiling of our century-old building. And a friend of mine had taken acid for the first time, and it was really hot in the jam space. And I remember him saying, John, I don't think I'm feeling it. And I look over, and he has his pants down around his ankles, and he's bent over, airing his butt crack to the fan that was in the room. And I said, I think you're feeling it. But no, that album was just, as somebody that was just getting into music, it definitely showed me that rock music was changing and that it could be a lot of different things, and so it sort of broadened my horizon. And, I started making electronic music kind of after then. So, all right, thanks.
Here's Jasper.
All right, I'm not sure if it's an album or an EP, but it is the only thing they have released. And I will not lie to you, this band might be one of my favorite bands of all time. Fishbait, a local band from the Iowa City area, I'd like to believe. And oh my gosh, their self-titled EP, album, whatever, the best there has to be. Nautical Prog kicks ass. Go listen to it. Best song off the album, Grundle.
Hi, my name is Lucas Smith, founding member of the greatest band in the world, Abnormal Man. I've been requested by Accelerativ Thrust to list off my favorite albums. Now, I'll start by saying this is almost an impossible task, but I'll give it my best shot. I tried to think of it in terms of albums that I do not skip a single song. So I've narrowed it down to a handful. Here goes. Toadie's Rubberneck album. Love that album front to back. Always have. Let's see, next we'll go Pixies, Bossa Nova. Absolutely love that album. Came out right around when I was born. Seems like it was meant to be. Electric Light Orchestra's Discovery. Always been a favorite of mine. Agent Orange, Living in Darkness. One of my favorite punk albums. Let's see. Weezer's Blue Album. Fantastic album, front to back. Let's see. Beck, Odelay, and let's say the Gorillaz self-titled album. Oh, and Ween, Chocolate and Cheese. I believe that's it for now.
John Spalding, buddy of mine, Neurosis, Times of Grace, although he did state that he has a lot of favorite records.
Hello, Dan and Erik. It's Tim. My favorite records, a lot of which I'm sure will be covered by other folks. Rubber Soul by the Beatles, Disintegration by The Cure, A Love Supreme by John Coltrane, Kind of Blue by Miles Davis, The Sidewinder by Lee Morgan. But a record I find often I return to that I don't think of as a favorite band or particularly special as a group, but very much as a record, would be OK Computer by Radiohead. Came at just the right time in my life and really the right time in their career. I think it's the greatest thing they've ever done. Super fantastic. Thanks.
Hey everybody, my name's Noah Kester. I've been playing music up and down the east side of Iowa probably the last 20 years or so. Played in like bands like Organs, The Feeding, Nether Void, In the Mouth of Radness. I'm currently in a Seethe. Just put an album out last year. It was pretty dope, called The Cost. I was asked by my good friends here on the podcast to have a short list of albums that I think are the greatest of all time, or at least ones that have stuck with me throughout my entire life ever since hearing them. So here we go. The first one off the top of my head, Mr. Bungle, Disco Volante. That was the album that made me realize that I didn't have to play Green Day and Nirvana songs for the rest of my life or any type of top 40 stuff. I heard this at 15, and it pretty much split my gourd ever since. So much weird shit happening from front to back on that album. Another album that has stuck with me probably ever since middle school, Quicksand's Slip. That was such an angry album without being fast or heavy. It's just mid-tempo. It's just got this seething just attitude, and it's just, I don't know why, but I honestly think it's one of the best albums of the 90s. Another one would be Combat Wounded Veteran. I Know a Girl Who Develops Crime Scene Photos is the name of the album. I fell in love with that one just because it is just unchecked aggression. It's like right amount of violence, the right amount of time. This was just raw and unrelenting, and that is why I thought it was way better than anything else. Another one that comes to mind would be this band, Camera Obscura. The band from San Diego, they were on Trouble Man around like the year 2000 or so. They had an album called To Change the Shape of an Envelope, and I just revisited that like maybe a week ago, and it still holds up. There's just so much area they're covering with that. It just sounds way full. It just sounds like a bunch of like hardcore kids just found Six Finger Satellite and My Bloody Valentine and just did their thing. Another album that, is probably stayed with me ever since, another one since middle school is De La Soul. De La Soul is Dead. That is one of my favorite albums ever. I know, everyone was getting tough and very, ego-driven around that time when it came to hip-hop, but, and I know people were, still trying to feel out what they were doing, but De La Soul just kept doing what they were doing and not taking themselves seriously. This proof of talent without ego. Another one, Coil, Time Machines. Coil is one of my favorite bands ever. I know they're basically known as a drug band, but it's either I can't pronounce said drugs or can't afford them. So luckily I just like weird music. So it just kind of broke my brain again, like Mr. Bungle did. It was just kind of like this ongoing, no matter what I was doing, that album could just follow what I was doing, even passively or just laying there listening to it. Just pretty much took me on a journey. Chelsea Wolfe, Pain is Beauty is another one. Just such a great album, front to back. I've listened to that a million times. Even just enjoying it or just while I'm doing something, it's just a nice vibe. Really catchy, but just really just chilled out, calm and fierce at the same time. I've said, that's just been an album that just gets put on, and if I don't have anything else I don't feel like listening to. And I guess the last one I can think of is Bandway out of, I think, Georgia. They did an album called Night Rock, and it is probably by far one of the dumbest rock albums ever, but it is also, in my opinion, just rock music at its concentrated level. I'm hearing just every classic rock album ever in every song they do. Even sometimes probably because they're straight up ripping said song off, but it's just hilarious and awesome. So I highly recommend everyone pick that up if they even like rock music. So that's pretty much everything I can think of. So off the top of my head, thanks a lot, y'all, and happy 150th.
Here's Travis Austin from FKA Climate.
I'm going to give you 3 of my favorite albums ever. And it's going to be divided by age. So when I was 5, my dad did a cassette rip of a vinyl of Jethro Tull's Broadsword and the Beast, and every single track on that is an absolute prog rock heater. Imagining a 5-year-old child in 1990 flipping out over Jethro Tull. So that's all you need to know about me. Second album, which we've spoken about in a prior podcast, is Diorama by Silverchair. I was a teenager at the time, and Silverchair released this album that was, I thought the guy was dead. I thought he died of anorexia. I didn't know any better. But no, he came out and created with his band one of the most triumphant, blessedly beautiful album I've ever heard in my life and may ever hear. With exception to number 3, which I heard last year, which I think has changed the trajectory of guitar rock for the better. It is Two Star and the Dream Police by McGee. It has changed. I'm 39, right? Like, I hear this at 38. I'm thinking to myself, this is nothing like I've heard before. He is one of the most virtuosic, talented musicians in the world, and I absolutely love his songwriting. It was embedded into my brain and has not looked back. So those are my big 3. I really, there are so many others, but those 3 are the ones that I think has stuck out to me the most.
Ethan from 24 Thank You says, the best music to me is something that just strikes me down where I stand, where no level of analysis or active listening can guide my feelings. It's just music that cuts straight through. Depression Cherry by Beach House is an album that is completely impervious to any of my critiques or attempts to break it down. My brain can say things like, they copied the Cocteau Twins, or, all their albums sound the same. But all my heart knows to say is, this is the most meaningful music I've ever heard. I love when an artist boils their music down into its most important elements and just delivers a refined masterpiece. The songs are winding, intentional, and just completely hypnotizing. However, these are only things I think about when the music is off, because when the songs turn back on, my soul is instantly and gently placed back into a trance. It makes me feel things so deeply it's a bit uncomfortable, but it's something I could not live without.
Yo, this is Adam Boltz, and thanks for asking me about some of my favorite albums. These are in no particular order, but I did list 10, so I'll try to get through these in an expedited way while still giving you my thoughts. I'll probably regret the list as soon as I go through my records. Maybe not. First one is Gene Clark's No Other. Album came out in 1974. This one, it's incredible. It's from beginning to end. So yeah, Gene Clark, No Other. Followed by Grateful Dead, American Beauty, 1970. This album, I've listened to it probably at least once or twice a month since middle school. So that says something. I'm 41. So yeah. The next one would be Depeche Mode, Songs of Faith and Devotion. And I sat here for a little bit and thought about my relationship with Depeche Mode. I've loved this band since I was in middle school. I think this is my only 90s record on my list. It's a cool record, man. It's Depeche Mode, Songs of Faith and Devotion. The next one is the only metal record that made the list by the symphonic death metal band Flesh God Apocalypse from Italy. In particular, their 2013 album, Labyrinth. This record in particular is why I got through college and grad school in my 30s. It just means a lot to me because it helped me get through all of that. The next one is Lustmord, Purifying Fire. I was thinking about how much I've loved ambient and noise and different types of kind of soundtrack music. So that was a little bit hard for me, but I narrowed it down to Lustmord's 2000 release, Purifying Fire. This record in particular, I'm just drawn back to it continuously. So highly recommend Lust Mord's Purifying Fire, released in 2000. I guess this would be early 2000s release, The Breeders' Title TK. The songs are great. It's recorded great. It sounds the way that rock albums should sound, but never do. And I like the Breeders stuff, and I like the Pixie stuff, but as far as an album, give me Breeders' Title TK. It's fantastic. Of course, a couple more here. Rolling Stones' Exile on Main Street, 1972. This record, what hasn't been said about this record? The songs are great. I still listen to this record fairly often. I've got like 6 copies of it on vinyl for some reason, too. So if you need one, let me know. I think that record, for me, goes beyond just having music be enjoyable, inspirational. I think it, creates a conduit, the definition of rock and roll behavior in a musical way. So, yeah, that's one of my favorites. The next one is going to be Funkadelic, Standing on the Verge of Getting It On. Eddie Hazel. When people ask who's your favorite rock guitarist, it's a dumb question, but I have a default answer, and it's Eddie Hazel. I love his guitar playing. I love that album, Standing on the Verge of Getting It On. The album's so cool. It's so weird, and his guitar playing, Eddie Hazel's guitar playing throughout all of it, just glues it together and makes it seem so rock and roll. It's just really great record. 2 more. T-Rex the Slider. Speaking of a conduit, and this record for me was that. The record came out in 1972. How I heard this record was Eric Whitaker, the members of the podcast. When I was recording the beat string stuff, he's like, "Have you listened to T-Rex?" I was like, "No." And so he burned me 2 copies, one Electric Warrior and one The Slider. And it kind of ruined me because I was like, this is what I want in my mind. This is what I've been hearing and I can't get. So it really kind of messed me up. I didn't know I was trying to make in the early 2000s music which had already been made perfectly. So then it became this weird thing. It's a weird thing as a musician to hear something that has been in your mind and you've been trying to create and can't for some reason, and then you hear it. So it was a sort of a love relationship mixed with, I guess, jealousy that Mark Bolan had already done this shit. Lastly, this is the final one. I'm going to say Pleasure Forever's self-titled record from 2001. This one I bought randomly at a hardcore show. So I bought it completely blind, and it ended up being one of the most inspirational records, beginning to end. It sets such a vibe, and the vibe is cabaret. It feels slightly satanic. They had an album come out maybe in 2005 called Altar, and then nothing. And I just feel like this is a band that was it kind of sounds like The Doors, but not. It's like the evil Doors. I don't know. Pleasure Forever, self-titled 2001. Check it out. So that's my list. I love your podcast, and thanks for asking me what's up. Peace.
Yeah, and actually, I'm very, very interested in hearing everything that you picked, Erik. So.
Okay, well, let's get into it. My number 1 favorite record is the Violent Femmes' self-titled.
I should have guessed that right away.
And it's funny because we talked last week about what we were listening to that week, and I talked about the Femmes. But then we decided we were going to do this best of thing. So I actually edited out all the stuff I said about the Femmes last episode because I knew I was going to bring it up again here. So, Dan, you've heard this story a number of times, so get ready to be bored. But yeah, so here's how it worked out, and I'll tell it fast because I'm sure if you've even listened to even 2 episodes, I've already told this story. You've heard it. So I had a gift card to Musicland at the mall. I went with my sister to spend that. I had already picked out a Cannibal Corpse record, and I was deciding what else I was going to get. And so that tells you where my head was at. I had just moved from what I consider basic metal, meaning thrash and new wave of British heavy metal and stuff like that. I had just started to move into extreme metal, and that was the trajectory, 100%. I was just going to be this metal guy the rest of my life. But then my sister said, hey, I heard this at a party. If you buy it and you don't like it, I'll buy it from you. So it was the Violent Femmes self-titled on cassette, which is a note. It's of note, kind of. Anyway, on the way home, we listened to it, and yeah, literally everything changed. Everything changed for me in that moment. So the reason I mention all this is because coming out of heavy metal, regardless of what style, for the most part, it's bigger. The idea is to make yourself bigger, right? The ideas are like fantasy stuff. You fight dragons, or I don't know. It has to do with power, a lot of it, and a lot of machismo, and violence, and just sort of imposing your will on the world through, I don't know, aggression, sort of. And so when I heard this from the first notes, I was like, okay, this is weird. This is acoustic guitar. And then when I heard Gordon Gano's voice, it was over. I was just like, what in the hell is going on here? Because it was so foreign to me that someone would be vulnerable, that someone would be self-deprecating, that someone would sing in such a high, nasally, almost confrontational, resonant way, where, and this is going to sound weird, but I honestly didn't know if it was a guy or a girl singing when I first put it on. I really had no idea, because that's how different it was from anything I'd ever heard. I was blown away by it. The lyrics, just from the jump, like the I stain my sheets part, I was like, Jesus Christ, I don't think you can say that. I don't think you can talk about the fact that you're an adolescent whacking off. Like, I don't think you can put that in a song, but obviously you can, And the more I listened to it, the more I related with so much of it, not just the whacking off, but like just the vibe of the whole thing was, it was just like, I'm being vulnerable here because I am vulnerable, like I'd never heard anyone show that side of themselves in music. And it's still pretty rare. People are still, for the most part, pushing an image or something, or building themselves up. And I just don't think Gordon Gano, in his singing and his performance and his lyrics, that doesn't seem to be the point, to make yourself bigger. Beyond that, the musicianship of the whole thing, it was where I was coming from, coming out of metal that was extremely technical. This sounded so raw that I couldn't even believe they recorded it. I didn't know you could just have 3 people banging on instruments and say, that's a record. Like, I really didn't know that. Like, I thought you had to have electric guitar and a drum kit, and like all of it really, really changed the way I understood what music was. And just the songs themselves are so catchy, it's ridiculous. Like, I kind of say that I have musical Tourette's, which I know is insensitive, but like someone says a phrase or a word or anything, and I automatically start singing a song that incorporates that. And I would say the Femmes, I sing at least 3 to 5 Violent Femmes songs every single day. Like, I just can't help it. It's weird. I don't think they had gotten into the sort of Baptist, religious, dark religion aspect of things quite yet on this album, but it was leading to that. For the most part, it's the acoustic guitar, it's Brian Ritchie's acoustic bass, and it's Victor DiLorenzo banging on a snare or half of a keg. Like, for the most part, it's really based in busking. This is what they do on the street, and they just recorded it. There are cool moments where other instruments come in. Gone Daddy Gone has a vibraphone and a really sick electric guitar solo. Good Feeling has some strings, but for the most part, it's just these 3 people. And I just didn't realize that music, that rock and roll could be so small, but have such a loud voice.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I don't know what else really to say. That's probably way more than enough to say about it. But yeah, I don't know. Did you have anything to say about the first Femmes record? Yeah,
sure, absolutely. I love the Violent Femmes, and so my experience with the Violent Femmes came from two different places. First thing, I was watching. Do you remember when Woodstock '94 happened?
Yeah.
So I didn't watch the pay-per-view where they actually televised the whole thing, but MTV did a special where they just showed some highlights of performances. And that was when I was first getting into like a lot of the performers that were there, like Green Day. That was kind of like a big monumental performance for them. And Nine Inch Nails. I kind of got into Nine Inch Nails more after watching their performance. Primus too. But anyway, there was one performance from this band called the Violent Femmes. And honestly, I was just like, what the hell is this? Because kind of had the same response that you did, where it was like, that you did, Eric, where it was like, okay, it's an acoustic guitar and like some guy standing up playing some drums or something. And they're all kind of barefoot and they're playing this song called Blister in the Sun. What the hell is this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there was also something that was like, I liked about it. You know, I was like, this is kind of cool. This sort of just reminds me of like, yeah, busking is a great sort of comparison. I was like, I could see like three guys doing the same thing on the side of the street and anywhere, you know? And then the other thing that I found this out later, but there is a Pete and Pete episode. Once again, going to bring out the Pete and Pete reference called X equals Y with a question mark. And Gordon Gano plays Mr. Zank, a substitute mathematics teacher in that episode.
I almost remember that.
Yeah.
Almost.
And I was like, this guy looks really familiar.
Yeah.
And then I was like, wait a minute, this is the guy from the Violent Femmes that I just saw. But I think that two things. I think the Violent Femmes are kind of because I 100% agree with you, what you were saying, that they were kind of like this antithesis of like shredding, right?
Yeah, right.
And so there probably were a lot of people that heard the Violent Femmes for the first time, like you, Eric, and thought, well, I don't need to play electric guitar anymore.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I think that folk punk probably came out of this quite a bit.
Yeah. I could talk about this record all day. The reason I mentioned it was on cassette, it was because it doesn't come with the lyric sheet. It wasn't until years later when I got it on vinyl that I saw the lyric sheet, and it's all handwritten, which just I had never seen to that point, except maybe in like some DIY punk stuff. But it almost was like a manifesto. You know, it had that vibe to it. So I don't know. Like I said, I could talk about this record all day long, forever. So I love it.
It is great stuff. Yes.
So for my honorable mentions, here's the deal. I'm going to cheat. I just had to. And Dan, if you want to add any more to your list because of it, here's the thing. I wanted to make this a personalized list, right? Like what has affected me the most, and my favorite albums in my life, and blah blah blah, right? But I gotta say quickly that there's a few of them that I took off my list because they're so freaking obvious that they're on everyone's greatest records list, right? So I'll just burn through those. Revolver, Aeroplane Over the Sea, Pet Sounds, Hunky Dory, and Odyssey and Oracle by the Zombies. Like, those could be on anyone's list, and so I didn't want to spend any time on them. But they are as important as the ones I'm going to say. So I know that's cheating, and I'm really sorry, guys.
No, that's fine.
It just was too difficult. So I'll just read them. Honorable mentions. The Plugs, Electrify Me. For me, this represents completely the best elements of Southern California, Latinx punk rock, Repo Man vibes, you know, surfing, skating, punk rock. I don't know. I just lowriders. Like it's everything that I love about life, kind of in one thing. Next, Suicide, self-titled. I don't really have to get into that. Obviously,
Good one.
Changed the way I think about music, 100%. Not that I utilize all of this, but even with the mindset change, it makes a big difference. You know.
Sure.
Gravediggers, 6 Feet Deep. I just think it's so fun and dirty. Like the samples are so dirty and its construction. And horrorcore is basically, you know, my favorite kind of hip hop, and I think it's a great entry into that. Mr. Bungle, self-titled. Disco Volante could have been it, but Mr. Bungle, self-titled. A lot of these, I seriously shaped my personality, so that's a big part of it. I loved how irreverent it was, how violent it was, how stupid it was. And how just scary it was. I think it was great. I had never really listened to ska to this point. I had never really listened to much grindcore and stuff like that by this point. I didn't know exactly what I was hearing most of the time, but I knew it was amazing. Breeders, title TK. Again, just I never thought of how sparse music could be and how beautiful it could still be with hardly anything happening. Dexy's Midnight Runners, To Rai I. This album is so underrated, it's disgusting. I think it suffers a little bit from the 80s production of it, but the songs are amazing through and through. It plays out like a whole like opera of sorts. And
does that have Come On Eileen on it?
It does. Yeah, okay. It's kind of tacked on to the end. I think it was more of a single, but it works fine. It's a great way to end the record. Kevin Rowland's voice is just so cool. Like, there's no other voice like it. Robert Smith maybe gets close every once in a while. But anyway, if you haven't listened to it, check it out. It's way better than you can imagine it's going to be. For They Might Be Giants, I went with Lincoln. It was the first one I had, which makes a big difference. You know, I think Flood has good songs. I think Apollo 18 has amazing songs. I think Factory Showroom has amazing songs. But as far as the weirdness and out of left fieldness of it and the just embracing the dorkiness, like, I don't know, Lincoln does it for me. Next is Scott Walker, The Drift. Again, this just rewired my brain. I didn't know music could be so sparse and so terrifying and just transport you like this record does. It is except for maybe Con 8 Things Viral. And no, it's actually scarier than that still. I think it's the scariest album I've ever heard. So that means it's good, obviously. Porno for Pyro's Good God's Urge. I was never a big fan of the first record, but I think Good God's Urge is killer. I think the production, the musical ideas, the melodies, everything about it, it's a journey. Next is Portishead Dummy. I think maybe the scratching element of it is a little bit dated, but all other aspects of it are so forward thinking and just so cool and just like, you know, it's like spy music. It's like hip hop. It has everything. I don't know. It's really cool. Misfits, Walk Among Us. I don't know. Again, how simple can music be? And how beautiful can it be within these really hilarious parameters? You know, like they're singing about the most ridiculous, disgusting stuff, but the songs are so good and so catchy and so singable. Like, I think the song Skulls was literally in my head for at least 5 years of my life. Like, it was just lived rent-free in my brain. Great record. Lou Reed, Transformer, just from beginning to end, amazing. PJ Harvey, To Bring You My Love. The production of it is outrageous.
Yeah, like, it's an amazing one.
It's almost offensive, some of the production that happens on that album. Velvet Underground, and Nico, or Andy Warhol, whatever you want to call it. First Velvet Underground record. Again, Sunday morning started and I said to myself, what? You can't be this soft. Like, you can't, you know, like, I just didn't understand how vulnerable people can be in music. I think the things I grew up on, punk and metal, that's not how it is. You're inflating yourself. And yeah, so the last one is the Toadies Rubberneck. I just love it. I have been influenced by it so much. I do think that there's elements of it that are problematic. I think some of that is of the time, but I think the approach, the songwriting, the visceral nature of it, the weirdness of it, the dark gothic, almost Southern storytelling elements of all of it. I just think it's really cool.
Yeah.
Most of these bands, there were multiple records I could have picked, but those are the ones I landed on. Yeah, this was hard. I didn't like it.
Very hard.
I mean, I did like it because I got to revisit all these records that I love. But well, this was a fun exercise, and I'm really glad that everyone responded and shared with us, because you guys have listened to us now a lot, and so I think it's really fun to have all these all these different takes on things, because
for sure
I think our lists probably were surprising a little bit to some people. I think some things other people said are going to be surprising too. It's like we expect people in metal bands to like metal or whatever, and it doesn't seem to be the way it is. And what affects you is what affects you. You can't do anything about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, man, this was quite the experience, this episode. I got to say, I'm pretty overwhelmed by everyone responding, and I don't know what else to say. This was so much fun. If you want to tell us about something to review, and honestly, I'm going to be listening to a lot of records that people said are their favorites. Too. So that's exciting. But yeah, if you have a band, or people have a band, or you just like a band or a record or whatever, seriously, tell us about it, because we can't find everything,
Yes.
and we have blind spots just like anyone. So we'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely.
About what we should be talking about.
Definitely send us suggestions. We love it. Yeah. This was a very, very great experience for both Erik and I. For
Good
sure.
stuff. Yeah. Absolutely. So you can email us at accelerativ.thrust@gmail.com. Leave the E off of accelerative. You can get a hold of us on Instagram.
Yep.
Again, thank you guys for listening, for continuing to listen. And if you've fallen out of the habit of listening to us, maybe it's a good time to start up again. We're doing half-hour episodes. I mean, not this one. This one's probably going to be 6 or 7 hours at this point. But, I think it's a fun show. I think you'll enjoy it. So, yeah, I don't know what else there is to say except
bye.
Bye. The more I listened to it, the more I related with so much of it, not just the whacking off,